Tonight, the Queen's difficult decisions. Buckingham Palace reveals the 30 guests allowed to attend Prince Philip's funeral. As Charles and Camilla read messages of condolence today, Windsor prepared to host what's being called a family event. Also on the programme, the NHS under pressure. More than 700,000 people are now waiting to start hospital treatment in the capital because of the pandemic. And the fallout of coronavirus is dominating the mayoral election too.
I don't think it works to have hyper-localised lockdowns.
Simply wouldn't work in London.
The local authority absolutely should be involved.
It's not easy to say one place has a different rule to another.
Plus, the Golden Girl aiming for more glory in Tokyo. Good evening. With new details of Prince Philip's funeral revealed late this afternoon, Windsor is preparing to host what looks to be a grand and yet modest occasion. The town in the unusual position of not wanting people to visit on Saturday. Princes William and Harry will be there in the funeral procession, though not next to each other. Guests will wear face masks, and with only 30 allowed, the Queen was said to have made some very difficult decisions. As Martin Stew reports, Buckingham Palace have described the funeral as being very much a family event.
Visibly moved, Prince Charles and Camilla took time this morning to read some of the thousands of messages left in tribute to the Duke. The flowers were originally left outside Buckingham Palace, but have been moved to the grounds of Marlborough House to stop people gathering in London's royal parks. At Purbright Barracks in Woking, they've been rehearsing for Saturday's funeral all week. The ceremony will take place in Windsor at 3 o'clock, immediately after a national minute's silence. We learnt today that Prince Charles, seen here arriving at Windsor, will wear a mask at the ceremony, as will the Queen and all guests. But none of the family will be in a military uniform, a safety-first decision given the situation with Prince Andrew and Prince Harry.
Windsor's no stranger to hosting large royal events, but this will be a very different day to Harry and Meghan's wedding back in 2018. Of course, in terms of a much more sombre and reflective tone, but also because they actively want people to stay away.
The funeral procession won't be visible from outside the grounds, so it's only by watching on TV you'll be able to see Princes William and Harry, separated by their cousin Peter Phillips, as they walk in line behind their grandfather's coffin. Nevertheless, cabbies still expect the town to be busy.
People have been told to stay away. Do you think they'll listen to that advice?
I don't think so.
Thank you, be very, very busy.
To keep pavements free, al fresco seating has been banned by the council on Saturday, much to the irritation of cafe owners.
We've been waiting for all this time to put the tables out, to have all customers back again, and there's like a little bit step back on business-wise.
Despite the private nature of the funeral, there will still be grand and personal touches. The Duke's coffin will be transported on a custom-made Land Rover of his own design, whilst 9 personally selected insignia will adorn hand-stitched cushions.
Insignia, orders, decorations, medals are a way that a country has of saying thank you and recognising somebody's achievements.
Once the 50-minute ceremony is over, Prince Philip's body will be interred into the royal vault of St George's Chapel, a fitting end after a lifetime of service. Martin Stew, ITV News.
Medics who arrived at the Fishmongers Hall terror attack have told an inquest their decision to enter the building was unprecedented. There were fears Usman Khan was wearing an explosive vest. Nonetheless, the response team entered the hall where they had to work out which of the casualties stood the best chance of survival. Our senior correspondent Ronke Phillips reports.
3.5 hours before he died, this is Jack Merritt arriving at Fishmongers Hall. Happy and smiling, the 25-year-old was captured on camera several times at the Learning Together conference, an event organised by Cambridge University to help with the rehabilitation of former prisoners. Jack, a criminology graduate of the university, suffered 12 stab injuries, including a fatal wound to the chest. The inquest jury today heard evidence from paramedic Carlton Cullinan. He said he was specially trained to work in environments where there's a risk of terrorist attacks threatening public safety. The first responder told the inquest he was escorted into the hall by an armed officer to find Jack Merritt lying on his side. He described the scene as messy, chaotic and crowded. He added that there was a lot of blood. A decision was made to stretcher Jack out of the hall for treatment by an emergency doctor who was positioned close to Monument Station. The inquest heard that a team carried out heart compressions, but Jack couldn't be saved and was declared dead just after 2:30 that afternoon. 23-year-old Saskia Jones was stabbed in the neck. She staggered to the bottom of the stairs, collapsed and died at the scene. The knifeman Usman Khan, who travelled to the conference from his home in Stafford, was wearing a fake suicide vest under his coat. He listened to the speakers, ate and drank before going into the toilets to strap the 2 large knives to his hands that he would use to stab his victims. The inquest at London's Guildhall, which is examining the deaths of Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones, will resume next week. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
A judge was forced to meet a defendant in his cell today after he refused to go to his hearing. Vladislav Joyval has been charged with wielding an axe near Buckingham Palace after police spotted him on Tuesday evening. He was due to appear at Westminster Magistrates' Court this afternoon, but refused to leave the cells. A pub owner has been jailed for the manslaughter of a 7-year-old boy who was electrocuted while playing in the beer garden. Harvey Terrell suffered a fatal shock at the King Harold pub in Romford when he touched some poorly installed outdoor lights in September 2018. David Bierman was sentenced to 9 years in prison. And the Poplar and Limehouse MP Afsana Begum has told the Commons today that she is a survivor of domestic abuse. The Labour politician spoke of her experience and told colleagues how life-changing the support she received was as she urged them to approve amendments to the Domestic Abuse Bill. The number of people waiting to start hospital treatment is now at a record high because of the pandemic. At the end of February this year, 4.7 million people were waiting to begin treatment. That's according to NHS England, and more than 700,000 of them are here in the capital. Well, Katie Barnfield is with me now. Katie, there really is huge pressure on the NHS then.
Absolutely, a really difficult year for the whole of the health service. But when you actually look at these numbers, some of them are pretty shocking when you compare this year to the same time last year. So, for instance, across the country in February 2021, the number of people who'd been waiting more than a year to start treatment was just under 388,000. That's gone up from just over 1,600 in February 2020, so a massive jump. Now, if we look at London specifically, in total there were almost 750,000 people waiting for treatment in February this year, with less than 72% of people seen within 18 weeks, which is significantly lower than the NHS target of 92%. Now, mostly this relates to elective or non-urgent treatment, but worryingly, there also has been a drop in things like urgent cancer referrals from GPs. Now, the Prime Minister was asked about this today, and he promised he would provide some extra cash to help.
We're going to make sure that we give the NHS all the funding that it needs, as we have done throughout the pandemic, to beat the backlog. And I think we've put about £92 billion already extra into the NHS.
Well, NHS bosses are keen to point out that they did still do nearly 2 million elective procedures during the winter spike in infections when there was a huge number of coronavirus patients in hospital, and they've got their own £1 billion recovery fund, which they say should improve things. OK, Katie, thank you very much. In 3 weeks' time, voters go to the polls to elect London's next mayor. All the candidates have their own ideas and priorities if they take office. But of course, at least the beginning of their 4-year term will be dominated by the pandemic, as we've just been hearing about. So where do the contenders stand on local lockdowns, surge testing and the capital's recovery plan? Chloe Keedy has been finding out.
If he's re-elected as mayor, Sadiq Khan says he'll stand up for London. But with campaigning restricted by COVID, candidates are worried about how many Londoners will stand up for them.
This has been the most surreal campaign I've fought because of the pandemic. It's difficult to get the energy you get during a campaign because of the rule of six. And I'm really keen to encourage Londoners to firstly register to vote, but secondly register for a postal vote. That will mean that you can vote safely early from home. But we've also had really good reassurance from councils and others. They're making sure that the polling stations are COVID safe.
The Mayor had just unveiled a new advertising campaign, criticising his Conservative opponent. The Mayor says you're talking London down. Is that right?
The mayor has failed in London, hasn't he? And he would love for everybody to focus on something else. But we've had record levels of crime. He's missed these housing targets by such a wide margin. It's unbelievable. So of course he wants to focus on something else.
One thing most people care about is stopping the spread of COVID. This surge testing centre in Lambeth was set up after new cases of the South African variant were found in this borough. Sean Bailey says he would support bringing in local restrictions to contain the spread.
London is very big, so if this variant takes hold in any particular place, the local authority absolutely should be involved in how we deal with that.
But launching her manifesto in Richmond today, the Liberal Democrats candidate Louisa Porritt disagreed.
I just don't think that's practical for a city like London. We have people who move across our borough borders all the time, so I don't think it works to have hyper-localised lockdowns.
She says she's focused on how London can recover from the pandemic.
I think we've got an amazing opportunity to finally fix our housing crisis with more empty office space coming onto the market, converting some of that space into quality, affordable homes. I don't hear or see any of that kind of thinking from the other candidates.
But the Green Party candidate Sian Berry would disagree with that. She shared her vision for a post-pandemic city.
The West End started to open up and we have to think about the long-term future of the centre of our city, and to me this means making it a place that's nice to come to for the whole day, a place that everyone in Britain will want to come and visit once again, and it means getting rid of all this traffic. I think Londoners are crying out for a new start, and the Green campaign, the Green ideas that we're putting forward are the only thing that really represent that.
4 candidates with different ideas. Each has their own vision. All say they now need people to vote. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
And here is the full list of candidates standing for London Mayor next month. You can also find that list on our website. Just search for ITV London. Next tonight, Sally Jacobs from North London lost her husband Derek in 2019 after he was killed in an accident on a so-called smart motorway. He was hit by another vehicle after he was forced to stop when his van broke down. Since then, Sally has been campaigning against smart motorways, saying she doesn't want another family to experience her grief, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
When Sally Jacobs' husband Derek left their North London home to drive to Yorkshire 2 years ago, there was no reason to think he wouldn't be back later that day. But on the M1, just south of Sheffield, his van blew a tyre. Because he was on a so-called smart motorway, there was no hard shoulder.
He got out the passenger side, and before he could get over the barrier, a car hit his van, crushing it onto him, I assume. The car then turned over and a coach hit the car. Nobody deserves to die that way.
Derek's death is one of a number which have prompted calls for smart motorways to be scrapped, but the government is committed to them. The M25 is already a smart motorway. There's a lane of traffic instead of a hard shoulder. Part of the M4 through West London and Berkshire is being converted at a cost of more than £800 million. Drivers we spoke to had their doubts.
You don't get to choose where you break down. And yet the government says wait another couple of miles to pull over to the side. You don't always get that choice.
You haven't very much choice. If there isn't a hard shoulder, you're just going to pile into the vehicles either side of you.
I've come close a few times myself to rear-ending something that's just stopped.
In March, the government published what it called an evidence stocktake, which recommended more refuge areas where drivers can pull over and radar systems which can spot stranded vehicles. In a statement, Highways England said, the government's evidence stocktake of the safety of smart motorways analysed a wealth of data and found that in most ways they're as safe as or safer than conventional motorways. We are committed to delivering the stocktake actions to further raise the bar on smart motorway safety.
We know that if a vehicle stops in a live lane, there is a more than 200% increase or risk in them being involved in a collision, and that is really, really worrying. Breaking down at the best of times is a terrifying experience. You don't want to be doing that on a motorway, but if you do it in a live lane, for drivers that would be an absolutely terrifying experience.
Sally is now a campaigner against smart motorways.
You put on a brave face for everybody, but in your heart you die a little more every day without him.
The M4's makeover is due to be complete at the end of next year. Current plans will see 800 miles of smart motorway in England by 2025.
And we can head to our Westminster studio now to speak to Simon ahead of the late debate tonight. Simon, what's on the programme?
I'll be joined in the studio by MPs from Beaconsfield, St Albans and Slough to talk about smart motorways and whether there needs to be a rethink. We'll also look at whether Monday's roadmap milestone, followed swiftly by surge testing in 4 London boroughs, raises the worrying prospect of local lockdown restrictions. And after a debate in the Commons today, should students be compensated for a wrecked academic year? That's the late debate here on ITV after news at 10.
Thank you, Simon. To a young woman now who has her sights set high for this year's Paralympics, which will finally go ahead in July. Jessica Stretton from Hemel Hempstead made history winning gold in Rio when she was just 16, becoming Britain's youngest ever medalist in archery. Now she's aiming for glory in Tokyo, and I'm delighted to say she joins me now. Jess, hello, great to see you. How's training going?
Hi there, it's great to be here. Training's actually going really well at the minute. Thanks to the elite dispensation and clubs opening up, we're all sort of like getting back into the swing of things, and things are rearing up and getting ready.
And how hard has that been with the uncertainty over the date of Tokyo?
It was quite difficult to begin with the whole uncertainty last year. It's a lot better now that we've got a definitive date and things are sort of ramping up. Teams are sort of starting to get announced, and everything's starting to get really hyped and raring to go.
It's getting very serious now, isn't it? Tell us about your training routine then. How many hours are you putting in a day?
It's difficult to say how many hours a day. We typically train from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 3 or 4 at night shooting wise, 3 or 4 in the afternoon shooting wise, and then we'll have a gym session after that some days, and others will just get a bit of downtime to rest and recover.
Now, you changed categories in archery a few years ago, didn't you? For simple people, i.e. me, can you explain exactly what that means, what difference that makes to you?
So my category used to be what's called W1, and basically that classification means that I shot my compound bow with a recurve sight, so it was sort of just a basic cross when looking at the target. I've now moved to categories to compound open, which means I get a magnified sight with a dot and a spirit level, which makes it a bit more accurate, and competitions tougher and a lot sort of more intense.
OK, I think I kept up with that one. It's tougher. You were a teenager in Rio. How do you think you've changed over the last 4 years?
I think I've probably matured a lot over the last 4 years. I think going into Rio, it was very much, I'm going there sort of to experience things, and I was still very new to the scene, whereas now I've been sort of there for about, 4 or 5 years now, so I've kind of got the hang of things and are more going with a sort of performance outlook in mind. OK, Jess, lots of luck. We'll be watching you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Now, families living 400 miles apart have been able to have lunch together today via live 3D holograms. Virgin Media has opened a pair of pizzerias, one in London and the other in Edinburgh, allowing people to eat with loved ones as though they are sat in the same room. At least they were sheltered from the April showers. I hope you didn't get caught out. Sally did warn us yesterday. Here she is now with the forecast for the next few days ahead.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. I hope you like this photo of the double-headed swan. Isn't nature amazing? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Now, weather-wise, we have a cold and frosty night ahead of us again. And then over the next couple of days, we've got some sunny spells. It's also going to be getting slowly a bit warmer as those northerly winds swing round, become a little bit more southerly in nature. However, if you've got hay fever, I'm afraid to say the pollen count is quite high over the next couple of days. And also the sunshine, we've mentioned that it's getting stronger. It's as strong around this time of year as it can be at the end of August and September. So if you're outside for a decent amount of time, do watch your skin. Right, returning to the detail for tonight, that cloud and any showers fading away, and then we've got clear skies again, so it's going to be another really chilly start to tomorrow morning. In some places, the temperatures below freezing, and we are looking at a frosty start. There might even be some little pockets of mist and fog around again tomorrow morning. However, to go with it all, we have the lovely sunshine. We're looking at another beautiful start to the day. Now, there will be some cloud bubbling up as we go through it, but I think at the moment it's looking like it'll be slightly less, there'll be slightly less cloud than today and hopefully a little bit more in the way of sunshine if that's what you're after. And in terms of the temperatures, highs of 10 to 12 degrees, so still below average, but a little bit warmer than it was today. The evening's looking pretty pleasant as well. That cloud breaks in it, giving us a little bit of sunshine. And that sets us up for the next few days. It's looking pretty good out there. Probably the best for the sunshine on Saturday. And as you can see, it's just starting to warm up. I'll see you later on. Have a lovely evening. Cheerio.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Let's return to the Duke now. And as preparations continue for his funeral in Windsor on Saturday, we've taken a look at another one of his passions. Prince Philip was said to be the royal family's biggest cricket fan. He was twice the president of Marylebone Cricket Club, the MCC. They own the home of cricket, Lords, and are known for being the guardians of the game. And it was the Duke who presented the winning trophy in the first ever Cricket World Cup. Anton Allen has more.
At Lords, the Duke opened the Imperial Cricket Memorial.
Over the decades, the teams and the uniforms changed with the times. The only constant was Prince Philip's smile as he greeted the batsmen and the bowlers of the game he loved so dearly.
You could always tell by the joy on his face when he was here how much he enjoyed being here, how much he loved the atmosphere of Lords and how much he loved a day at the cricket.
Prince Philip's love for the game took him on a lifelong journey from a player to its global ambassador.
Prince Philip was a very keen cricketer from an early age. He played to a high standard at school at Gordonston, and over the course of a long and very busy life, he maintained an interest in the game and an involvement in the game right to the very end.
After Prince Philip stopped leading teams on the pitch, he carried on captaining cricket from the stands and the boardrooms.
I think if you look at Prince Philip's first term as MCC president in 1949, the work he did towards the social inclusivity of cricket, the work he did towards encouraging young people at all levels to take up the game and enjoy it just as he had, I think that has contributed greatly to the success of cricket over the last few decades.
The MCC awarded Prince Philip with an honorary life membership.
During Prince Philip's second term as MCC president in 1975, the most significant event was, of course, the very first Men's World Cup final, which took place in England that summer, the final being held at Lords between West Indies and Australia. And if you think how cricket has changed since the success of that very first one-day international tournament, it's a very, very different game now. Prince Philip was there at the start. He'll have seen England play in and lose 3 World Cup finals, and to see them finally win one in 2019 would, I'm sure, have been a great joy to him.
It was fitting that one of Prince Philip's last official public engagements was opening the Warner stand at Lord's Cricket Ground.
I think there was always a sense of occasion when Prince Philip came to watch cricket at Lord's. You could always see by the look on his face how much he enjoyed being here. There's a definite sense of loss around the place. We'll miss him, cricket will miss him, and we look back on a long and happy involvement in cricket, a tremendous life.
Every visitor that signs in at Lord's Cricket Museum will know that Prince Philip's love for the game will live on throughout cricket's history. Anton Allen, ITV News.
And there is more on Prince Philip's funeral coming up in the evening news with Raggy Omar. That's in a few minutes' time. And we'll be back after news at 10. Until then, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.